What's up, beautiful people, and welcome to another session with the Mass Poet. Today we're talking about metaphors, how they can work for you in a poem or song, the different type of metaphors you can use, and also when is the best time to use a metaphor. Let's get right into it. Before we start, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn the notification bell so you never miss out on a morning session with the Mass Poet. Now, what is a metaphor? A metaphor is a figure of speech that directly compares one thing to another, such as comparing X to Y. Now, the purpose of the metaphor is to create a picture, create this painting for your reader, because they need something that can be explained in 1 or 2 lines versus trying to write 6, 7, 8 lines or a full verse trying to describe what you're talking about. The metaphor can give it to them in less than 1 or 2 lines. And just as much as a metaphor can enlighten a reader or paint them a picture, it can also add mystery to the story. Now let's talk about the different type of metaphors. The first one is your standard metaphor. It's a basic metaphor. Again, it's that X is Y, all right? That's what a standard metaphor is. An example of this is that we are all pawns in a game of chess. So pawns being X, and then game of chess being Y. Pawns are the people, game of chess is the world that we live in. We are all pawns in a game of chess. The next one is the implied metaphor. This one compares something or someone without describing what that other thing is that they're comparing it to. It's pretty much implied. That's why it's called an implied metaphor. A great example of this is that the fans roared in excitement as the performer entered the stage. And roared, again, we know what roared is, right? We know animals do that. We don't have to say that the crowd roared like animals as the performer entered the stage. We just say the fans roared because we know animals roar. So that's an implied metaphor. Now let's talk about the purpose of the metaphor. The purpose of metaphors is, one, to again be very vivid for the reader. It should describe the situation or the person or the character in the story that you're writing. It should be as vivid as possible and as clear as possible for the reader to get a great idea of what the situation is about or what that character is going through. And you also don't want your metaphors to be overly complex. You don't want to use jargon or language that the reader is not familiar with. Keep it simple, keep it basic. Again, we don't want it to be overcomplicated. We want that reader to be able to read what you wrote and be able to interpret it just like that. You also want to keep your metaphors original. Even though you don't want to make them complex, you still want them to be original. You don't want to be something that you heard before or your reader has heard before. That gets kind of boring and it gets redundant. So we want to add some flavor, add some pop to our metaphor. And again, people will love that you actually put some thought behind it, because a lot of times that first thought is something that we heard before or something that your reader has heard before. So think it through, come up with a second metaphor, then come up with a third original metaphor. And again, usually that second or third one is going to be the better metaphor and the more original metaphor. The last thing I want to talk about is similes. This is pretty much a subset of metaphors. It's not quite a metaphor, but it is a metaphor. And the difference between a metaphor and a simile is that similes use as or like. An example of a simile would be, she was as radiant as the sun, with the sun being radiant from its sun rays and her looking radiant from her glow from her skin. So that right there is a simile, where you use like or as when you're comparing something in your story that you're writing. So that right there are some great ways to use metaphors in your poems, in your songs, in your stories whenever you're writing. Let me know in the comments below, what are some of your favorite metaphors? Let me know some of your original metaphors that you may have come up with. But till next time, y'all be blessed and continue to write your truth. you.